Well, thank you so much for joining me. Today we have Marco Lindsey, who is the Associate Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at the Berkeley Haas School of Business. He's worked there for 14 years. He also owns MT Lindsey Consulting, where he delivers keynotes on diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace, and develops DE&I programming for his clients. Marco also works to connect BIPOC individuals to jobs in the tech sector, and he looks at DE&I from a lens that intersects with policy. So thank you again for joining us. I wanted to start by asking you to talk about your journey into diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and how you got into that space. I know you started as the Chief of Staff at Berkeley Haas. So how'd your role grow from there?
Got it. Thank you. First off, thank you for having me. I'm glad that we can have this conversation.
Yeah.
So, I was the Chief of Staff at Berkeley Haas, and in that role is purely administrative, right? So there are HR functions, facilities, dealing with people, but there wasn't a lot of interaction with students. Actually, there were no interactions directly in my role, and so what was happening, I was seeing inequities that some of our students were going through. And I started providing resources to them to help address those inequities, right? And this involved me taking money out of my own budget to make sure that they can go to relevant conferences, or make sure they have the opportunities to host certain events and functions, so that way they can have a sense of belonging. So there was that, but then also I was already doing a lot of this work, outside of work. This isn't. This is a job, but it's, first and foremost, it's my passion. I believe in equity. I'm a Libra, so I think things should be equal. At least for a lot of different demographics and populations. And so, I've always had that passion, that desire. I've always worked in the community, especially here in the Bay Area, and helping people connect to resources, helping people understand, their value, helping people understand that they belong and that they can thrive in different spaces that they've traditionally been, left out of. And so you mix all of that together, and so I was in this Chief of Staff role, and we had a crisis here at UC Berkeley in regards to some of the things that were happening with our students, and on the DEI front, and you can go to Ports and Quants and read about that, because it was pretty big. But from that, we were able to create a diversity and inclusion office. And at that time, I was able to create my own role, and I went and did some reschooling. I went back to school and got diversity first certified, so that way I can have some better understanding of the technical concepts of some of the things that I was already talking about, and that kind of got me to where I am today. Since then I've done a lot. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of connecting with folks. I'm always learning. I'm a firm believer that, we don't know it all. I tell people this all the time, as we're talking about being on a DEI journey, it is indeed a journey. And even though I do this for a living, in the personal space, I have my own consulting firm where I go and work with tech company, but then also here, even with that, I'm not there. I don't know it all. So none of us are there. We're all on a journey. Some of us are further along than others. And if you're not that far along, that's okay, because you have to start the journey somewhere. And none of us arrive. None of us will ever know it all. There's always something to be learned. And so, I'm continually and constantly trying to learn more and understand more, so that way I can be a better person, internally, just for me, for the intrinsic value, but then also so that way I can provide more resources and knowledge to those around me.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like I'm always learning. I love that. Nobody ever arrives at the end. It's a continuing evolution. And I think the other piece of that is that this work is always changing, right? The world is changing, people are changing. So that's a big part of it too. And I actually had the pleasure, I think back in 2018, to go to the Berkeley Haas diversity in-person event that you, I think, help host. So I can really speak to some of the amazing things you've helped those students be able to be a part of at Berkeley Haas. It was really super awesome event.
Thank you. Diversity Symposium. I remember that.
Yeah, it was so great. Well, I know you have 3 defining principles that you live by. Can you tell us more about those and why they're so important to you?
Definitely. So the first one is, paraphrase, just live your life as if your 80-year-old self is watching. And so the idea being that, you know, and what if you could go back to high school, there's certain things that you would do differently, right? If you can go back to college and, you know, wherever you are in your current lifespan, right? I'm in my 40s, and so I can say, you know, if I could go back to my 20s, there's some things I definitely do different. And so what if we could use some foresight to have some hindsight? So what will 80-year-old me wish that I was doing in my 40s, right? Because at that time, I won't be able to think as fast as I can think now. I won't be as strong as I am. I won't be as fast as I am. You know, there are certain things that, you know, certain faculties that you just won't have that you'll wish that you had taken advantage more of, you know, when you were younger. And so the question is, what 80-year-old me wish I was doing in 2021, right? And so whatever that is, and, you know, to the best of your knowledge, do that first. You know, do that first. And so that's the first life model, and it's actually the longest one that I've had the longest. You know, live your life as if your 80-year-old self is watching. The second model is, if you help as many people as possible become successful, then you can't help but become successful yourself. And so the idea behind that is twofold. One, you know, always be giving out and helping. I do a lot of mentoring. I take on a lot of conversations. Actually, right before this call, I met with someone, right? They're in Dallas, and, you know, a lot of times it's people that, you know, they can't necessarily, they will probably never be able to help me in any way, right? But the idea being that, you know, the more that you put out there, the more it's going to come back to you. I realize that if I'm ever feeling down, I need to go help some people. And I don't know why, but, you know, somehow it improves most aspects of my life. And so, you know, that's one part of it. But then also, if you help a whole bunch of people become successful, you have a network of successful people, right? And so, and now they may, you know, do you a favor, but even if they don't, it's helpful to have people who are successful, because, you know, they're going to think differently. They're going to push you. And, you know, one day you may need a favor. You know, your great nephew might need an internship, right? And you help someone become successful a while ago. Maybe that comes in. I don't know, but, you know, that's the second life model. And the last one is, you are someone's ancestor. There's someone that will have your blood or your name that you'll never meet. And the decisions that you make today will either positively or negatively affect their lives. Behave yourself accordingly. And so the idea being that, you know, if you think back, you know, some of us are wherever we are, probably because our ancestors did or didn't do something, right? Whether that's creating family values, whether that's creating a family business, whether that's, you know, sticking around the family or leaving the family, whatever the case may be, we're affected by those decisions. And there's somebody that's going to be coming around in the year 2102, right? And I'll never meet this person, but they might have my last name. They might have my blood in their vein. And what can I do now to help benefit them? Those are the things that I need to be doing. And so, you know, I think that, you know, with the first life model, you know, it's like, okay, what am I doing, you know, that I wish in the future that I had done for me now, right? But then this other part is like, hey, not me, you know, not 80-year-old me, but, you know, this is 160, this is 200 years from now. What am I doing also that can help benefit those that I'll never meet? And those are the things that we need to be doing, I think. And, you know, whether that's either you can make that personal, like your family, or you can just say Earth in general, right? People are going to inherit the Earth after us. What are we doing? Why are we being sustainable? Why are we making sure that we're using the resources that we have properly? Because someone is going to inherit this Earth after we leave it. And so we need to think about them as well to be good stewards.
Yeah, those are all great. I especially love the 80-year-old self and how you would look back, because, you know, we're always thinking about our past actions, and it's good to think about the future, how we'll look back at our actions now.
Right.
So you work with an organization called 100 Black Men of the Bay Area. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you do with them?
Got it. So it's the 100 Black Men of America. We're the Bay Area chapter. So the 100 Black Men of America, we have about 110 chapters, over 10,000 members. The organization actually started in the 60s. The Bay Area chapter started in '89. Now, each chapter has to focus on 4 areas: mentoring, education, health and wellness, economic empowerment. All right. Every chapter, all the 110 chapters, and actually we have chapters in Europe as well. They all have to focus on those 4 areas. Now, how you decide to focus on those 4 areas are totally up to you, right? And so, I've been a board member of the organization. I've been with the organization, I think, 11 years. I've helped with their public relations to make sure that people get the word out. We give out scholarships. We give, in the Bay Area, this year alone, we're giving out, I think, $105,000 in scholarships. Since 1989, we've given out about $1.9 million in scholarships, just for youth to go to school. And it doesn't cost anything, right? We're a firm believer, we have 2 mottos: real men given real time, and what they see is what they'll be, right? So it's a part of, modeling and then giving the time on that. And so my focus area is on economic empowerment. And we'll probably talk more about this later, but it's about connecting people with the opportunities that are here in the Bay Area. A lot of opportunities here. Gentrification is hurting a lot of people, and a lot of people are underemployed and they're losing their homes. And so, we decided a while ago that, there are ways that we could focus on that in regards to connecting people with the opportunities here, especially the tech sector. We also do a lot of teaching in regards to financial literacy. Unfortunately, what we find out is that, in a lot of underserved communities, nobody talks about these type of things. Nobody talks about, the importance of saving, or, what an APR is, or, predatory lenders and things like that. And so unfortunately, a lot of people fall into those traps and, payday loans and all these other things. And so we try to help people get through that, at least have a better understanding of that, so that way they don't fall into it. And just, case in point, when I got to school and I started at a JC, I took out a credit card. I think it had like a 40% interest rate or something like that. And I had no idea that that wasn't a great interest rate, right? And so I just make sure that, we help people avoid some of those mistakes that, a lot of predatory people are using within the community.
That's awesome. Yeah, that makes me think about the work I do around compensation and how people are so afraid to talk about the financial piece in general. All the things that you talked about, also with asking about compensation and benefits, negotiating those things.
Right.
We just really, as a society, need to get better about talking about money. It's so, so important. So that work is really, really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your favorite part about working in DEIB, and then do you have a least favorite part?
Yes, I have a bit of both, right? Both answers are people.
Okay, that makes sense.
Both answers are people. So, one of the, I'll say, favorite part about it is being able to help people understand some of the things that they either never thought about, didn't know about in general, and then, sometimes in particular. And so what I mean by that is, in the United States, and historically, we haven't necessarily been taught about everyone's history within the United States. Mm-hmm. So we have been culturally incompetent with one another, right? And so understanding that women have different needs than men, right? And have different aspirations and different wants and different everything. And, you can say that about the AAPI community, the Latinx community, the Black community. We're all different, but we all have our strengths. And then we all have our successes that we've had throughout the years. And unfortunately, a lot of times we aren't taught that. I was raised, going to schools that were predominantly Black. And I can honestly say that, I learned about slavery, then I skipped to the civil rights movement, right? And there's so much more deep cultural things that, I had to learn on my own. And so when I speak about this, there are so many people who don't understand this about the Native American community, about the Latinx community, about the Hispanic community. And so a lot of times it's rewarding when you can have those aha moments in people, right? And you can go over some literature, some data, and say, this is what's happening. This has happened. This is how this people have contributed to the American society and made us a better place. And this is why, this is happening. It's like, and you see people learning and working with people who are eager to learn and who are eager to, not only learn, but to implement what they've learned, right? And so, one part was the historical aspect, but then also, how are we interacting? How are we getting along? How are we making sure that we can leverage one another? And we come from different societies and different cultures, but how can we leverage that for the better? Whether that's the better of the community, the better of organization, or the better of ourselves, right? And so, Jocelyn, you come from somewhere totally different than I do, right? So you have some experience that I can learn from. So instead of me having to go through that experience, I can get to know you, right? And then I can become a better person from that. And so that's one of the, the highlights of it for me, just working with the people and seeing so many people. And I think that, the world is at an awakening where, a lot of people are interested in learning this stuff. And so there's that. I'll say on the flip side, the least favorite part are the people who just want to be stuck in their ways, right? It's, at Berkeley Haas, we have this term called students always, right? Where you're always learning. And you spoke on it earlier. We spoke like it's okay to learn, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who aren't there, and we have to continue to learn. And I'll say this, that many times many of us were raised by parents. Some of us weren't, but our parents were raised by their parents, and a lot of times some misinformation just passed down from generation to generation, right? And whether it's from a lack of knowledge, whether it's from just malicious intent, who knows? But if I as a kid, if my mom tells me something, I don't question it, right? And so a lot of times we grow up accepting these things to be facts when they aren't. And I think that's one of the reasons that we have so much discord between cultures. And the analogy that I always use is that I grew up thinking that riding in the car, the dome light inside the car, my mom said it's illegal to have that on. And I grew up my entire life believing that it was illegal to have that on. And it wasn't until I was late in my 30s or early 40s that I realized that wasn't the case. But that's just something that my mom was taught, and then she believed it, but no one has ever got pulled over for that, right? So so how many other things in life are we going forward with that we've learned? And maybe it's not from our parents, maybe it's just from socialization, maybe it's from the media, right? Maybe it's from our friends. We learn things as kids, and it's kids teaching kids, right? And someone who doesn't know anything teaching someone else who doesn't know anything, and dealing with people who aren't willing to let those things go, or at least be open to another perspective. That's really one of the most my least favorite parts of the job.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That makes me think of, have you heard the pot roast story?
Mm-mm.
So
with the pan.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So the woman is cutting the ends off the pot roast and putting it in, and her daughter asks her how, why she does that. And she just had learned that from her family. And when she goes back and says, why do we do this? The parent says, oh, it's because it didn't fit in the pan, and you're just cutting off the ends because you think that's how it's supposed to be, but really it's just because the pan was too small.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like really questioning why do we do things, or the things we learned, what was the purpose? Was it wrong? Yeah. Well, switching gears a little bit, I wanted to talk about your role as a father and what challenges that's brought through COVID, and how you think companies can support parents at work right now during this challenging time.
That's a great question. Parenting through COVID has been, extremely interesting and difficult. And I'll say interesting because we've had to question some of the models that we've accepted to be the norm. I'll say one thing about the education system, and I'm in education, is that we haven't innovated enough for our children, right? We still have the same model that we used over 100 years ago, where there's a teacher who stands in front of a classroom and pretty much, preaches to his kids, and, they take home homework, and they do these lessons, these tests, and we haven't changed that. And just given the way the world is, we know that it can be improved upon. Everything else has been improved upon, whether it's the banking system, whether it's, taxis, right? Anything, everything's been improved upon. And so with that, there's certain challenges that have come through COVID with education, being a parent and trying to, teach your kids and, having that model flipped a bit, where we're trying to help, your kids through assignments and being there, right? And, during the pandemic when everyone was at home, and I realized, some people are still home and some people at work, some people have hybrid models, but managing being a parent 24 hours a day and being an employee 8 to 12 hours a day. And there's a lot of overlap there, right? And I think that one of the things that companies either have done or can do is to provide more flexibility to their employees. And so what that looks like is I think the successful companies have realized that, hey, can you get the job done? One, can you get the job done? That's the first question. Secondly, what can we provide to you to help you get the job done if you can, right? What are the resources that you need that we can make that available? And then lastly, if you are getting the job done in whatever mode that works best for you, it's not up to us to change that. I think I've seen some organizations who are like, we're going to do it this way, right? And everybody has to come in the office, or everyone has to be remote, right? And depending on your own situation and the way that you learn, the way that you can succeed, and the way that you have your life set up, one or the other may not work. And so, organizations that have been flexible and say, hey, let's work with you. And, a lot of it is on the management team, a lot of it is on HR department. Some of it is on, inclusion workers, but creating pathways so that way people can be successful, not only at work, but at life. I mean, because when you think about it, we spend approximately like half of our waking day, more than half of our waking day at work, or at least doing work. So that's a huge part of your life. And so it's no longer about a work-life balance. It's a life balance, right? And so what can employers do, and what can employees do to have agency for themselves to speak up and say, this isn't working for me? Either as a parent, and maybe that's my perspective. These are the things that do work, and these are the things that don't work, right? And so I've seen, at least here, some of the things early on we decided was I guess, and depending on the organization, but a lot of people thought you need to have your camera on for every meeting, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not sustainable for everyone, right? If my kids are running around in the background, are going to be a distraction to you. I'm going to be thinking about it the whole time, because I'm going to be concerned that my kids are running around and you're thinking about it, you're judging me. And so now I'm not fully there, right? And then also maybe I'm having to, help them with an assignment, while I'm not speaking during this meeting. And if my camera's on, then all of these things are revealed. And so, there are small things like that, right? That I think organizations can do and have done to create pathways to where people, parents, and you don't have to be a parent, but just people in general can be successful. Because all those same things that I'm talking about, we have neurodiverse people. And, that means that, they interact differently with other people, but then also with technology. Mm-hmm. So are we creating pathways for them so that way they can be successful and figuring out their situation and their needs? And so, yeah.
I think those are great examples. It makes me think about the fact that when you adapt something for a particular group, you end up benefiting more people, right? I think the voice to text was developed for people who are visually impaired, but now everybody uses it. And so I think just like you're saying with having the cameras off, I do that with my team just to avoid Zoom fatigue. So, that can be beneficial. Having flexibility, I think that can benefit everyone. All those adjustments that companies can make to innovate. And going back to, what you said about school, starting to innovate with how we learn too, and how kids learn, I think is the direction in which we need to be moving. So, yeah. Talk to me a little bit about what Berkeley has done to support Black employees over the last year and a half. Do you feel like it's been enough? Can it ever be enough? What does that look like?
So I'll say, no, it hasn't been enough. Can it be enough? Potentially. I think that, one of the issues that UC Berkeley faces is that, we're a public institution, we're faced with Prop 209. And for those that don't know, Prop 209 is this legislation that came about I believe in the 90s, that, basically said that we can't provide any resources, organizational resources to one group and not the other, right? And so while in theory, it can make sense, but it's not an equitable solution. Yeah. Sometimes what Jocelyn needs isn't what Marco needs. And vice versa. And if you have to say, okay, if Marco's going to get this, Jocelyn has to get this, then, that might not be budget friendly. And it might not even be necessary because Jocelyn doesn't even want it, but you have to have the resources available there. So I want to overlay that and say, UC Berkeley has done a lot for the Black employees in regards to providing resources for, mental health professionals. We have, affinity groups that meet, to talk about, issues that are affecting the Black community. We've also had a lot of conversation with, people that are activists and people that are movers and shakers from the Black community. UC Berkeley has, created pathways for them to be here. And also the same thing for our, staff, students, and faculty. And so those are great things. But then also, there's just been a lack just in so much that I think that, our student population, especially, for Black students, is extremely low. I mean, it's less than 5%. And it's also low for our staff. And so what happens there is it's difficult to build community when you don't have enough people here. And I'm in constant conversation with Black colleagues, we'll end up on a Zoom and it's like, oh, I don't have any people of color in general in my department. And that can be isolating. Yeah. I don't think that as a whole, we've done enough to address that. So that way people can build community. And again, what I said earlier in regards to, you spend a lot of your time at work. You spend a lot of your time working. And so if you're not creating pathways where people feel comfortable, where people feel community, where people feel connected, then, you can be causing, some unnecessary stress on a lot of people within the organization, when if you just took some time to focus on these areas and bolster up the resources in those areas, I think we'd be a lot better.
Yeah. Do you think with not having enough staff and students at the school, is it more of a recruitment issue, more of a retention issue, a little bit of both? What are you seeing there?
Oh, I mean, so it's a recruitment issue, right? It's a recruitment issue, and so first off, yes, it's a recruitment issue. We're not getting enough people, in and through the pipeline. But then also it's a retention issue because now, if I'm here and, to the other point, I don't feel welcome, if this, I don't necessarily feel like my community is represented here, then I'll go somewhere where my community is represented. Yeah. And so it's a cyclical process that, needs to be addressed. And so, part of it is, let's do better with our recruiting. But then another part is, let's make sure that we're providing resources for those that are here and, find out from people what they need.
Yeah. Cool. So next, tell me a little bit about if you have a favorite project that you're working on, or even one that you've recently worked on, either with a client or that you're doing at UC Berkeley.
Got it. So my favorite project is the work that we do in diversity in tech. And I hinted this a little bit earlier, but with my consulting firm and through the 100 Black Men, since 2016, we've been working on increasing numbers in diversity. And I'll give you the backstory. So one day I'm walking through the halls here at UC Berkeley, and not minding my business, right? I'll admit it. And I hear tell a student that 60-70% of jobs in tech don't involve coding. This is 2016. And a light bulb went off in my head because I realized that a lot of communities of color don't know that. They think Google, they think Facebook, they think coding. But then also at the same time, and at that time, and you can even say now, a lot of tech companies were, getting in trouble with bad publicity because of the low diversity numbers. And so, through the 100 Black Men, I had a lot of connections in the tech sector. And so back then, what I decided to do was I got a grant through UC Berkeley. This is how it started, and hosted and used my tech connections to host a discussion. This was an in-person discussion we did in downtown Oakland on non-engineering careers in tech. And so this is on all the careers in tech where you don't have to know how to code. And back then we had Google, we had Yelp, we had Facebook, we had, quite a few, major tech companies there. We did at the Oakland Impact Hub. We had about 300 people there. We had the people on stage. End result, people got jobs, right? And so, we replicated that every August since 2016. Last year when COVID hit, we saw a lot of people have their employment negatively affected by COVID. A lot of people lost jobs or couldn't get jobs. And so, what we decided to do this year is bolster up those offerings, right? And so, I'm a firm believer in never waste a good crisis. And so since everything went remote, we were able to connect with, people from HBCUs across the world, historically Black college universities, HSI, Hispanic serving institutions, all the 110, 100 Black men chapters, 100 Black women, NSBE, National Engineering Society of Black Engineers, National Black MBA Association, all these other organizations that are nationwide. We can get them on a Zoom, and we can have more offerings. And so this year we had some wonderful offerings. We had Black excellence in tech. We had how to break into tech. We had one where it was meet the chiefs, where we had 4 chief diversity officers to come talk to people about the things that they're doing. We do one on non-traditionally trained engineers in tech, meaning I love Berkeley and I work at Berkeley, but not everyone's going to get into Berkeley. Not everyone's going to get into MIT, right? So what about the people that went to coding boot camps and they have the skills, but they don't necessarily have the pedigree or the connection? Let's use our resources to make those connections. And then we did our non-engineering careers again. And then lastly, the one I was really excited about is the last one we did. It's called Bridging the Gap in Tech. And what we did is we partnered with a Latinx organization, right, to talk about how we can create pathways for Black and brown communities into tech. And so this year we partnered with the Latinas in Tech organization. And, we had these tech companies come and bringing in their people, there's Black and brown people in tech. And so that was really exciting. I mean, it was very well attended, and people got jobs, right? And, we were able to bridge the gap between those communities because we face a lot of similar things. And so, those are some of the things that I've been excited about more recently, that event. And, we actually did that 1 week prior to Latino Equal Pay Day, right? We had the chance to highlight that for those who didn't know that, a lot of women, just period, don't make as much as men. And then there's a certain day throughout the year that different, whether it's Black women, it's Latin women, whether it's Native American women, where they have to work all of 1 year and then up until this day of the following year to make what a white man makes in that same year. And so for us, I think that was in late October for Latino. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So, yep. October 21st.
Yeah. Well, that's so awesome, the work that you're doing to get people pathways into tech. I think you said 60 to 70% of jobs in tech are not coding, don't require coding, right?
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense to me when you think about it, just all the support that those companies need. And, things even like sales and customer service and just all the different pieces. But that's really, really great to be able to help people connect into that field. I guess just in wrapping up, I'll see if, there's anything else you want to add. Also, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about your consulting business and the types of services you offer. If anyone wants to connect with you about having you speak at their company or do work with them, what that could look like.
Got it. Let me see. I'll just say, in general, the 100 Black men that we're having a scholarship gala this Saturday. And I don't know, when it's going to come out, but every year, the second Saturday in December, we have the scholarship gala where we raise money to send kids to college. Right? This doesn't go in our coffers. In order to be an organization, we have to pay. And so, it's about giving back. Just understanding that either A, someone helped me get where I got today, and so I need to pay that forward, so that way I can help someone else. Or B, I didn't get the help and I wish I would have got it, so I need to make sure that someone else has it. And so, that's important to us. And information on that can be found at 100blackmenba.org. in regards to the services I provide. I work with companies in a variety of ways. It's primarily in tech, but I've worked with law firms. I've worked in biotech. I worked in the food industry as well. And so, whether that's coming in as a keynote speaker, I'll come in and have conversations with organizations about, inclusion, about culture, about leadership, about, anti-racism, anti-bias, anti-blackness, all these different areas in which, we can learn to interact with one another better. So there's that. I moderate panel discussions as well, whether that's within the organization or, for various groups. I actually did one with the Gym Talent Summit not too long ago. That was really exciting. When we were talking about, the future of work, right? We're talking about hybrid models or, in-person models and so on and so forth. But then also go in and work with organizations on their recruiting strategies, and also working with, whether the leadership team or, just managers in general on how they interact with their various communities, the different cultures within the organization, and then creating pathways for them to do better, right, in the areas of inclusion. One of the things that, I really like to focus on, and I think is the root of some of the things that we do, is the ability to give feedback, right? And I say this a lot, but I say this a lot to my clients, but we have to be comfortable with understanding how, or making sure that our employees understand how to give management feedback. Right? As a manager, it's your job to give feedback to the employee, but it can be scary, right? It can be downright terrifying to give feedback to your manager, whether that's on a microaggression, right? You misgendered me or something like that, or my name is Rajiv, but you want to call me Raj. I don't want to be called Raj, right? And it's hard to say that, and so that's one of the things that I really get excited about, because it creates so many pathways for a better inclusion within the workplace. Because what you do is you establish how the manager wants to receive feedback. The manager goes and tells everyone, hey, if you have an issue with anything, right? Whether it's a product that we're working on, or whether it's, a microaggression, whatever the case may be, here's how I like to receive feedback. Whether that's the bookend model, where you come in with something nice, then you give the feedback and end with something else nice. Whether the time frame, whether I want to get feedback immediately or, wait 24 hours. Do I want it in person? Do I want it via Zoom? Do I want it on a telephone call? You have to be very, very specific. And so that way, you put that out there, and then people are more open and understanding to the fact, okay, if they've given me all these parameters to give feedback, then they really want it. And I'm going to follow these parameters. I'm going to write them down so that when I do have feedback, I can give it to them. And what happens then is, one, now that the manager has done that, or the leader, chief executive officer, everybody below them can also do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so now you have this culture where everyone can have conversations, because especially in the DE&I space, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice space, it's scary for a lot of people, right? A lot of people don't want to get involved in this because they think they're going to step on some landmine. They think they're going to say something wrong. They're going to think that they're going to ask a question that they assume that everyone else assumes that they sure already have the answer to. So they don't ask the question. And since they don't ask the question, it never gets addressed. And there are all these things that could benefit from us being able to create parameters where we can talk to one another about the hard topics. And I think that's one of the biggest things, or one of the largest issues I've seen in American society. I'll go that broad, but especially in a corporate culture, is a lot of people, especially people in positions of power, are afraid to have the conversation because they don't want to look stupid, or they don't want to make a mistake. And so instead of learning, they'll just avoid it altogether. But if we're able to make a pact, if you will, to say, hey, Jocelyn, I'm on this DE&I journey, right? I'm trying to learn. As I'm learning on this, I'm going to make mistakes. Understand that I'm not trying to harm you. I am not trying to be disrespectful to you. I'm learning. And if I make a mistake, I want to receive that feedback, but don't hesitate to give me that feedback. And so now I'm able to learn. And not only am I able to learn, I'm able to receive feedback when I make a mistake, but then I'm also more free to make mistakes because you have to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You have to make mistakes to learn. I think that, a lot of companies, or co-founders or founders of organizations, they started other companies first and made a mistake. It didn't work out and they started all over again. And now they're hugely successful. But for whatever reason, when you get in this space, people have this fear. And so that's one of the things I want to overcome where, we can, and it has to be genuine, right? You have to genuinely want to learn. You can't just say, I'm on this journey just so that way I can, be mean to you, right? But even now, I've misgendered people, right? And again, this is my job, right? Even now, I've committed microaggressions. But the beauty of it is, people give me feedback, and I'm able to learn from it and thank them for it. And I'm better because of it. The environment is better because of it. And we can create something that can be lasting within an organization, but lasting in our society. And I think ultimately that's what this is about. I do this, for my job, for my consulting, but honestly, it's my passion. It's really who I am. And it's about making today better for us, but then also making the better for the next generation, we have to do this iterative change until we have this huge change. And so that's what I'm excited about. Those are the services I offer. I can be reached at MT Lindsey Consulting.com. Anyone that's interested, I'd love to connect with folks. I'd love to have, initial conversations. I'd love to, come in and speak. I actually do a lot of speaking during Black History Month as well. And so I'm looking forward to it. And I'm just excited. And I'm really glad to be here speaking with you today, Jackie.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here too. All this information has been so valuable. Anything else that you want to add before we wrap up?
Oh, that's it. Just thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. Yeah, I think that I've been excited about the work that you do in regards to pay equity. I think that more people need to know about that. I think that that's, one of the last vestiges that, that we need to get through. And a lot of people are afraid of it. And so I want to thank you for that because it's extremely important, extremely necessary. And I'm pretty sure there are others doing it, but you're the only person I know. You're the only person I've heard of that's doing it. And so if there are others, that means that there aren't enough. And so that means, you should be doubly booked in helping folks do better at this.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There aren't a lot of people doing it. There are some great companies that are doing the work, but a lot of them just service really big organizations. So where I can come in with smaller orgs and focus on that, I think that's really valuable. And then part of what I want to do is get more people doing this work because I can't do it all.
Right.
And so that's why I think I had mentioned to you before about the course that I'm doing. And my plan next year is to do it 3 or 4 times. We do cohort model, but basically to teach people how to do pay equity audits in their org. So I am always looking for more people to educate on how to do it so we can get more people doing it, whether they're internal at a company or if they're a consultant and they can offer that service. I think it is a really important piece of DE&I because people go to work to get paid, and how we pay them communicates how we value their positions. So I think, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for taking the time today.